Welcome back to Math 99 Week 6. Just a reminder that you have a test next week. Check your course outline for the date and time of your test. And a reminder that you have quizzes due this week. Please check the dates on Pearson Math Lab to be sure you're completing everything that's due this week. So we wanted to look at factoring quadratic trinomials today. We've already looked at two ways of factoring. We looked at factoring by finding the greatest common factor. We've looked at factoring by grouping, which we used when we had 4 terms. Today, we want to factor quadratic trinomials. Those are those polynomials in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. So it's a trinomial with a highest power on x of 2. Before we start factoring quadratic trinomials, let's do some review of binomial multiplication. So remember that we're going to take the 2x from the first bracket and multiply the second bracket. We're going to take plus 3 from the first bracket and multiply the second bracket. And then we can combine our like terms in the middle. I want to take a look at how this final product, 2x squared minus 7x minus 15, relates to the binomials we started with. Let's look at the first term to start. We can see that we got that first term by multiplying the first terms here. 2x times x gave us 2x squared. Next, let's look at the negative 15. I hope you see we got that by multiplying the last terms. The trick in these questions is always that middle term. How did we get the middle term? So we're going to look at some steps for factoring so that we can always find which numbers we were given that gave us the final product. So notice that we're going to use this 2x squared minus 7x minus 15 to practice factoring. So we always want to start by finding A, B, and C. When people come to me because they're having difficulty with factoring, it's usually because they've decided to skip these middle steps. Remember that A, B, and C are the numbers that are found in our quadratic expression. So we see that B is negative 7 and C is negative 15. We also want to find A times C. So we see that A times C is negative 30. Don't leave off the negative signs. That's going to make a difference for us. Now remember last week we talked about those sums and products, and I gave you worksheets that you could practice because we're going to use that now as we factor quadratic trinomials. So we're looking for two numbers with a product of negative 30 and a sum of negative 7. Remember what we said, if you don't know those numbers, you want to list the factors of our product. So we have 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. Always list those factors in pairs, list them in order, that way we're not going to leave any numbers out. I hope you can see that if we subtract, 3 and 10 will give us negative 7. So we've found those two numbers, and we're going to use those numbers. They have to be the same in both places. They have to give us the answers we're looking for, negative 30 and negative 7. We're going to use those numbers to rewrite the middle term. So this term here is going to change, and we're going to use 3 and negative 10. So this whole thing becomes 2x squared plus 3x minus 10x minus 15. So notice that instead of writing negative 7x, we put 3x minus 10x. Now we can just factor by grouping. Good thing you spent some time practicing that last week. X is common in the first two terms. There's a negative sign in the middle, so I know I want a minus sign here. 5 is common. Negative 15 divided by, excuse me, negative 5 is positive 3. So we see that we have 2x plus 3 common times x minus 5. If we go back to the beginning, we see that's what we started with here. 2x plus 3 times x minus 5. Remember that this is always going to be written as a product. Every time you're asked to factor, your answer should be multiplication. And we can check our answer by multiplying. Now we've already done the multiplication for this question up here. So we know that 2x plus 3 times x minus 5 does equal 2x squared minus 7x minus 15. This process is so important. I have a whole page of practice here for us. So let's go to that. Let's work through the first question together. We're looking for A, B, and C. And we want two numbers with a product of A times C and a sum of B. Now remember again, if you don't know what those numbers are, you're always going to list the factors for our product. And we can see that if we use 3 and 6, one of them is going to have to be negative. Now we can use those numbers to rewrite the middle term. Plus 3x minus 6x minus 18. Factor by grouping. X is common. Negative 6 is common. So we have x plus 3 times x minus 6. I'm not going to check our answer every time, but let's do it this time. If you are checking, make sure you tell me that so I know that you don't think this is part of the process. It's just a check. So we have x times the second bracket plus 3 times the second bracket. And we see that this product matches what we started with. If you think you're ready to try the next one on your own, pause the video. If not, let's work through question 2 together. So we need A, B, and C. Two numbers that multiply to equal A times C and add to equal B. A times C is 6. B is -5. Again, list the factors of our product. Now, lots of people jump in and put 1 and 6 here. And then they say, oh, to get -5, 6 needs to be negative. But if I make 6 negative here, it doesn't equal +6 when I multiply. Be careful. Again, this step is important. And if you're not getting the right numbers, your factoring won't work out. So 1 and 6 don't work. We know 2 times 3 multiplies to equal 6. We also know if they're both negative, they will add to -5. So now we can use those numbers to change the middle term. 3x squared minus 2x minus 3x plus 2. The order doesn't matter. If you decided that you wanted to put the 2 here or the 3 here and the 2 here, that's fine. It's going to work out either way. Factor by grouping, 3x is common. -2 is common. So we have x minus 1 times 3x minus 2. Again, if you want to check, pause the video and multiply those binomials. I think you should try the next one on your own. So pause the video here, see if you can do it. All right, what about question 4? A equals 5, B -11, C is 2. Two numbers that equal A times C and add to equal B. If they're both negative, it works. X is common in the first group. -2 is common in the next group. So now we see that 5x minus 1 is common, multiplying x minus 2. Remember, you have to go all the way to that product. If you stop here, it's not correct. Factoring is asking for a product, a multiplication answer. Two numbers that equal A times C and add to equal B. So we list the factors of 28 if we don't know those numbers quickly and easily. And we see that 4 and 7 could give us the positive 28 and the negative 11. X is common. Negative 7 is common. So we have x minus 4 times x minus 7. A equals 2, B negative 5, C equals 3. Two numbers that multiply to equal A times C and add to equal B. This is that same 5 and 6 that was tricky last time. People always have trouble with this. Is it 1 and 6? Nope, doesn't work. Have to use 2 and 3. Make them both negative. Using those two numbers, negative 2 and negative 3, to rewrite the middle term. So instead of writing minus 5x, we use the numbers we found. We see that 2x is common here. Negative 3 is common here. Now x minus 1 times 2x minus 3 is our factored answer. A equals 1, B equals 1, C negative 20. Oops, I didn't want that. So two numbers that multiply to equal A times C and add to equal B. I see if I have one of them negative. If one of them's negative, oh, I see. I forgot the negative sign from negative 20. There we go. Now I see if the 4 is negative, I can add and get 1, multiply and get negative 20. So again, I'm going to change the middle term. Minus 4x plus 5x. Was that a minus 20? Yes. Factor by grouping. X is common. Plus 5 is common. X minus 4 times x plus 5. 2 more. Oh, 8 and 8 I wrote. That's all right. A is 4, B is 5, C negative 6. Two numbers that multiply to equal A times C and add to equal B. Factors of 24. I see I'm going to have to use the 3 and the 8. The 3 will have to be negative to give me a positive 5 and a negative 24. Rewrite the middle term. X is common in the first two terms. Plus 2 is common. So we have 4x minus 3 times x plus 2. And the last one. Although I hope it's not the last one that you practice, because this is an important process that we're going to use a lot in the following weeks for this class. And I won't spend a lot of time talking about the process. I'm just going to expect that you've practiced it. Well, I've already factored 24 up above there, didn't I? Yeah. And the same numbers I can use, 8 and 3. But this time I see that 8 has to be negative to give me a negative 5. Two x is common in the first two terms. Just 1, I guess. 1 is common in the last two terms. So we have 3x minus 4 times 2x plus 1. If you have any difficulty with this at all, or if you're very slow, I would strongly recommend that you do 5 or 6 factoring questions aside from your regular work every day until you get the hang of it. Let's go back to your notes here. Now, of course, there are always ways to make questions a little more interesting. And sometimes you're going to be reminded that you need to factor completely. That means you need to pay careful attention and always check for a greatest common factor. So if I look at the first question here, I see that there's a greatest common factor of 3. So we want to divide each term by the greatest common factor. But then you see inside the brackets, there's a quadratic trinomial that we need to factor. So we follow the steps. Actually, let's see if I can do that a little bit on scrap paper. X squared plus 3x plus 10, minus 10. Give me one moment. X squared, oops, that's not what I wanted to have happen here. Okay, here we go. X squared plus 3x minus 10. We see A, B, oops, B is positive, and C. Two numbers that multiply to equal A times C and add to equal B. It must be 5 and 2. And the 2 must be negative. So we have x squared plus 5x minus 2x. Remember, that was replacing our middle term, minus 10. X is common. Negative 2 is common. So this part factors to x plus 5 times x minus 2. So remember, I've just factored this. X plus 5 times x minus 2. So if we go back to our question, now I can write, instead of this, x plus 5 times x minus 2. And there we have it, completely factored. Notice that we kept the greatest common factor as part of our final answer. What about this question? I see that 5 is common in all of the numbers, but I also see that there's an x in every term. So we're going to divide each term by 5x. That leaves 2x squared minus 5x plus 3. Let's go back to that other sheet of paper I was using and factor 2x squared minus 5x plus 3. Two x squared minus 5x plus 3. We have to find a, b, and c. Two numbers that multiply to a times b, add to equal b. I think this is our -2 and -3 again. Two x is common in the first two terms. -3 is common in the last two terms. So this factors to x minus 1 times 2x minus 3. So we can take those and replace the trinomial with x minus 1 times 2x minus 3. Notice that we kept the greatest common factor as part of our answer. We want to look at one more type of factoring. It's actually the same. It just looks a little bit different because you'll notice that instead of only having x here in these binomials, we have y. Why don't you pause the video and multiply this out? Remember that x multiplies the second bracket plus 3y multiplies the second bracket. And again, we have like terms in the middle. And just like at the start of this lesson, when we multiplied the binomials, you'll notice that 2x squared comes from multiplying the first two terms. And minus 3y squared comes from multiplying the last two terms. We just need to look at how to find the middle term containing x and y. The process is really the same as what we've been doing all along. We still want to find a, b, and c. 1, -3 and -4. Two numbers that multiply to equal A times C and add to equal B. Use those two numbers to rewrite the middle term. Now notice it's 1xy minus 4xy. So the only difference from the questions we've been doing is that xy. Now factoring by grouping, I see that x is common. And -4y is common. So we have x plus y common multiplying x minus 4y. I think this is a good place to pause this video. I'd like you to take time before you start listening to the next video to attempt questions 2, 3, and 4. Remember to check for a greatest common factor.